Imagine you and your family have decided to visit our lovely capital to do some high-end luxury shopping. As you stroll down Oxford Street, you'll find yourself before an iconic building that forever changed the face of retail, Selfridges. Now its grand facade still whispers tales of a golden age when Hollywood stars and royalty rubbed shoulders in its elegant halls. But behind these magnificent doors lies a story of spectacular rise and tragic fall. Harry Selfridge, the retail genius who built this empire, led a double life that would ultimately destroy everything. By day, he was London's merchant prince, revolutionizing how we shop. By night, he transformed into a different person entirely, a gambling addict who couldn't resist the siren call of London's exclusive casinos. In today's episode, we'll share the story not just of a beautiful building or a revolutionary store, but a cautionary tale of how one man's secret obsession brought down not only his own future, but also shattered his children's inheritance, as we describe the Selfridges family. When your father gambles away your family's luxury story inheritance. Selfridges, the grand dame of London's legendary shopping capital, Oxford Street, first threw open its lavish doors on the 15th of March 1909, welcoming a staggering crowd of 150,000 eager shoppers. And Harry Gordon Selfridge, that audacious American entrepreneur with a flair for the dramatic, didn't just open a store. He transformed the dreary backwater of Oxford Street into London's sparkling retail mecca. Thus, between 1909 and 1929, Selfridges was revolutionizing the very act of shopping, and the store dared to toss out those stuffy glass cases that kept cosmetics and perfumes under lock and key. And the architectural masterpiece housing this behemoth was built by legendary Chicago architecture Daniel Burnham to the tune of tens of millions of dollars in today's money. Its steel frame construction created the perfect stage for window displays so mesmerizing they captured attention day and night, and the marketing simply dazzled. While Edwardian London still ran on gas lamps, Selfridges illuminated the evening sky with electric displays. He introduced seasonal sales to British shores, launched post-Christmas bargains, and brought Mother's Day to Britain. When Louis Blériot made history crossing the Channel, his aircraft found its temporary home inside the store. Furthermore, the social impact proved remarkable. The store's restaurant served 2,000 distinguished guests daily, including ladies dining alone, quite the sophisticated statement for the era. During the Great War, it became an elegant hub where families gathered to read war updates and write to their soldiers. And today, Selfridges arguably maintains its crown. The Oxford Street flagship welcomes 15 million visitors yearly, generating $1.1 billion in sales as of 2019. Yet, Harry Selfridge, the retail genius who created this empire, would ultimately become his own worst customer, developing an insatiable appetite for gambling and high-stakes games. And the man who taught London how to shop would end up selling his controlling interest in the company for a fraction of its worth, spending his twilight years as a familiar figure shuffling along Oxford Street, gazing up at the windows of the empire he'd lost. In the harsh winter of 1858, in a small wooden house on the outskirts of Ripon, Wisconsin, a child was born who would transform the very nature of retail commerce. The date was January 11th, and the boy, Harry Gordon Selfridge, entered a world where the echoes of frontier life still resonated through the wooden-planked streets of this Mississippi River town. But to understand the forces that shaped this man, this future architect of modern shopping, one must first understand the intimate geography of absence that defined his earliest years. When Robert Selfridge, Harry's father, abandoned his family in the aftermath of the Civil War, he left behind more than just a wife and 3 children. He left a void that would create an insatiable hunger in young Harry, a constant need to prove himself that would drive him to unprecedented heights, and ultimately contribute to his spectacular fall. The abandonment shaped not just Harry's childhood, but the very architecture of his ambitions. So, The true foundation of Harry Selfridge's education in survival came not from his absent father, but from his mother, Lois. Here was a woman who defied the rigid social constraints of post-Civil War America, and in an era when widowed and abandoned women often faced destitution, Lois Selfridge refused to accept the limitations society placed upon her. She secured a position as a teacher, then rose to become a school principal, achievements that, in the 1860s, marked her as a woman of extraordinary determination. Young Harry watched, absorbed, and learned. There, in their modest home, where every penny was counted twice, and where every meal represented his mother's triumph over circumstance, he received his first lessons in the art of perseverance. Thus, the boy who would later dazzle London society learned first to appreciate the dignity of work, the importance of presentation, and the power of refusing to accept defeat. At 14, an age when more fortunate boys still attended school, Harry Selfridge approached the imposing facade of a local bank. The position he secured there, through sheer force of will and personality, provided more than just an income. It offered an education in the mechanics of money, in the psychology of those who possessed it, and in the subtle art of persuasion that would later serve him so well. But it was his entry into Marshall Field's in 1876, that vast emporium of consumer desire in Chicago, that truly began to shape his understanding of human nature and commerce. Starting as a stockboy, earning $6 a week, Selfridge studied not just the merchandise, but the subtle dance between desire and fulfillment that drove successful retail. Within 2 years, his insights and innovation earned him management of the handkerchief department, a promotion that revealed not just his aptitude, but his ability to transform simple transactions into theatre. Over the next quarter century, under the direct tutelage of Marshall Field himself, Selfridge refined his understanding of retail psychology. Field's famous dictum, "Give the lady what she wants," became more than a slogan to young Selfridge. It became a framework for understanding human desire itself. Through successive innovations, the bargain basement in 1885, the department store restaurant in 1887, the countdown to Christmas campaign in 1890, Selfridge demonstrated an almost uncanny ability to anticipate and shape consumer behavior. By 1891, the stock boy had become a junior partner, commanding an annual salary of $50,000, a fortune equivalent to $1.5 million today. But even this remarkable ascent wasn't enough to satisfy the ambition born in that small house in Ripon. Thus, when Selfridge visited London in 1906, he saw not just a city, but an opportunity, a chance to transform not just a business, but an entire society's relationship with commerce. In the dawn hours of the 15th of March 1909, as workers made final adjustments to the gleaming brass fixtures of London's newest retail establishment, Harry Gordon Selfridge stood at the building's massive entrance, contemplating the transformation of not just a street, but an entire society's relationship with commerce. The structure before him represented more than the £400,000 of capital he had assembled. It embodied a singular vision of what shopping could become in the still rigid social hierarchy of Edwardian London. The path to this moment had begun in 1904, when Selfridge departed Marshall Field's with a fortune and an idea. But money alone couldn't build empires. Understanding this fundamental truth, Selfridge meticulously cultivated relationships with Chicago's wealthiest socialites, transforming them from mere customers into investors in his vision. Each handshake, each dinner party, and each carefully orchestrated meeting added another thread to the financial web he was weaving. The selection of Oxford Street, then a decidedly unfashionable address, revealed Selfridge's deeper understanding of urban transformation. Land prices were lower here, yes, but more importantly, the location sat at the confluence of multiple transportation lines. And Selfridge had studied the flow of London's population, understanding that retail success depended not just on what you sold, but on the mechanics of how customers reached your door. The building itself represented a revolution in British architectural engineering. Daniel Burnham, the Chicago architect who had reshaped the skyline of America's fastest-growing city, brought steel frame construction techniques that were virtually unknown in British retail architecture. The massive plate glass windows, unprecedented in size for their time, transformed the very relationship between store and street, between commerce and public space. Those windows would become stages where Selfridge would direct elaborate theatrical productions of consumer desire. Inside, Selfridge orchestrated a transformation of retail culture that went far beyond mere shopping. The marketing campaign alone, £36,000 worth of carefully crafted messages, represented more than many stores' annual revenue. But the true revolution lay in the details. Cosmetics displayed openly on counters, breaking centuries of social taboo. Restaurants serving thousands daily in an environment where women could dine unchaperoned. Demonstrations of scientific wonders that transformed shopping into education and entertainment. Throughout the 1910s and into the early 1920s, Selfridge's innovations penetrated every aspect of retail operations. The store's customer service philosophy dismantled traditional barriers between social classes. Personal shopping services, once reserved for aristocracy, became available to the rising middle class. The Information Bureau, a concept Selfridge invented, transformed the store into a hub of urban life, where one could book theatre tickets, arrange travel, or simply learn about the day's events. The rooftop garden, opened in 1911, exemplified Selfridge's understanding that retail success required more than mere transactions. Here, fashion shows mingled with concerts, society gatherings with public entertainments. In winter, a ski slope drew crowds, while in summer, the space hosted demonstrations of the latest technological marvels. Each event, each innovation, served to weave the store more deeply into the fabric of London life. By 1914, when annual revenue exceeded 2 million Great British pounds, Selfridges had become more than a store. It was a symbol of modernity itself. The profit of £375,000 thus validated not just a business model, but a revolutionary approach to understanding human nature and desire. Harry Gordon Selfridge had not simply built a department store. He had created an institution that would reshape the very nature of urban life and consumer culture in 20th century Britain. Yet, simultaneously, in the dim light of London's exclusive gambling clubs, a chair always remained empty, awaiting its regular occupant. As Wall Street trembled and fortunes crumbled across the Atlantic, life in London's exclusive gambling establishments continued unabated. Yet, at the same time, London's exclusive gambling clubs always held a separate empty seat, awaiting a consistent customer to show up and sit down. Harry Gordon Selfridge had become as familiar a presence at the high-stakes tables as he once was in his grand Oxford Street store. The man who had once calculated retail profits down to the penny now watched thousands of pounds disappear with each turn of a card, each spin of a wheel. And the daily losses, £5,000, equivalent to around £300,000 in today's currency, revealed not just a gambling addiction, but the unravelling of an empire. But the transformation from retail genius to compulsive gambler didn't happen overnight. Like the gradual erosion of a mighty riverbank on the Thames, Selfridge's descent into financial ruin came through a series of seemingly disconnected decisions, each one pushing him closer to the edge. The numbers tell the story. By 1931, in the span of just 5 years, he had squandered over £1 million on the Dolly sisters alone, twin dancers whose hypnotic hold over the aging merchant proved as destructive as any addiction. The relationship with the Dolly sisters illustrated a fundamental shift in Selfridge's character. The man who had once understood the psychology of desire better than anyone now became its victim. When Jenny Dolly lost £40,000 in a single night, Selfridge's response, paying the debt without hesitation, demonstrated how completely his once legendary business acumen had deserted him. The gifts flowed endlessly, matching automobiles, jewelry, even covering their own gambling debts. Each expenditure represented not just money lost, but the erosion of a lifetime's work. As the Great Depression tightened its grip on Britain's economy, Selfridge's personal financial crisis accelerated. The sequence of events became a case study in denial, borrowing against his store shares, selling properties, yet maintaining a staff of servants he could no longer afford. Lansdowne House, his beloved mansion, slipped away, but still he refused to acknowledge the inevitability of his decline. The board of directors at Selfridge's store watched this deterioration with growing alarm. In 1939, the numbers could no longer be ignored. By 1941, the man who had revolutionized British retail found himself stripped of his chairmanship, reduced to a pension of £2,000 per year, a sum that would barely have covered one of his previous evening's gambling losses. In the final years, Selfridge's daily routine took on a tragic rhythm. From his modest flat in Putney, he would make the journey to Oxford Street, standing outside the store that bore his name, watching customers enter and exit through doors that were no longer his to open. The staff, those who remembered his glory days, would occasionally invite him in for tea, a courtesy extended to a man who had once commanded an empire of commerce. When Harry Gordon Selfridge died in 1947, his estate totaled £4,000. The mathematical progression from his peak wealth of £65 million to this final sum represented more than just financial failure. It charted the complete inversion of a life's achievement. His burial at St. Mark's Church in Highcliffe, beside his wife Rose, marked the end of a journey that had begun with such promise in that small Wisconsin town. Soon, his descendants would have to pick up the fallen pieces from the casino store, so to speak. The dissolution of the Selfridge fortune rippled through the next generation like aftershocks from an earthquake. Each child's story represented a different aspect of privilege lost, of expectations suddenly and irrevocably altered. Rosalie, the eldest, embodied the family's attempt to maintain dignity amid decline. Her marriage to Prince Alexander Wiasemski had seemed to secure her position in society, but as her father's empire crumbled, she found herself selling family heirlooms to meet basic expenses. Her loyalty to her father never wavered. She became his lifeline in those final years, managing his meager pension with the same care he had once applied to millions. Violette's trajectory perhaps best illustrated the family's dramatic reversal. Her wedding to French nobleman Jacques de Cibourg had represented the pinnacle of Anglo-American social ambition, a ceremony that commanded headlines across 2 continents. Yet, the eventual dissolution of that marriage forced her to confront a new reality. Living to age 99, she witnessed not just the end of her own privileged existence, but the transformation of an entire social order. Her later years served as an example of how completely wealth and position could vanish within a single generation. Harry Gordon Selfridge Jr., Gordon to family and friends, carried the heaviest burden of expectation. Trained from youth to assume control of the retail empire, he possessed neither his father's innovative spirit nor his natural grasp of human psychology. By the 1950s, the heir to one of retail's greatest fortunes could be found operating a modest bookshop in London, his transformation from presumptive retail magnate to small businessman marking the final chapter in the family's commercial ambitions. Beatrice, the youngest, experienced perhaps the most profound displacement. Her marriage to Serge de Bolotov dissolved, leaving her to navigate the harsh realities of post-war Britain with diminishing resources. Like her siblings, she watched the family name transition from symbol of retail innovation to cautionary tale. The final irony emerged in 2021, when Selfridges sold for £4 billion to a Thai conglomerate. The store Harry Selfridge built had become more valuable than ever, yet his descendants, working ordinary jobs, living ordinary lives, remained disconnected from the fruit of their grandfather's vision. Their story represented more than the loss of a fortune. It demonstrated how quickly the distance between extraordinary and ordinary circumstances could be traversed, how 3 generations could span the gap from creation to collapse to obscurity. And now, we'd like to see you in the comments. Have you visited Selfridges, the legendary department store? And if so, what is your opinion on it and the family's story who gave it its name? We can't wait to hear your thoughts below, so don't be shy. With that said, thanks for joining us for another episode, and cheers until next time.